Hey everyone, Dan Gunther here, doing something a little different today. Normally, of course, you would tune into my channel to see my thoughts on Star Trek, whether it's the latest news or a recent episode of Discovery or Short Treks. However, today I am bringing you my review of the first episode of the new Star Wars television series, The Mandalorian, streaming on Disney+. While I'm obviously a bigger fan of Star Trek than Star Wars, I still do really enjoy Star Wars. I have reviewed the Star Wars films in the past on this channel, and if you look at the logo at the start of my videos, the original intention of this channel was to cover more science fiction than just Star Trek. Over time, it has evolved into being primarily about my first love, which is Star Trek, of course. But I do like Star Wars. I've even got a few Star Wars things with which to populate my back shelf, but not nearly as many as Star Trek, so I didn't change anything around. But maybe in coming weeks when I review further episodes, I'll change the background up a bit and make it a little more reflective of Star Wars instead of the Star Trek memorabilia that I have back there. But let's get to the main purpose of this video, which is to just kind of give you my initial thoughts on the first episode of The Mandalorian and kind of my thoughts going forward for the series. I do have to say, first off, I did enjoy the episode. I did find it start out a little bit slow. The pace is certainly a little bit more languid than maybe we're used to for things like Discovery and that sort of thing, but I found upon repeated viewings, I actually really appreciated that slower pace. It's very clear they're going for the Western aesthetic here, and it really works. I find that the Western feel of the show, especially the music, really contributes to that. And it's very fitting for the universe of Star Wars. We, of course, never see the face of the protagonist, as he is a Mandalorian and wears that helmet pretty consistently. What I'm really interested in is learning more about the Mandalorians as a race. I've seen the Clone Wars, and I remember a little bit of that, but I'm not someone who has gotten into a lot of the secondary material outside of the films and television shows. I've actually still never even finished Rebels, which I do intend to do at some point, easier now that it's all on Disney+. But the backstory and the lore of this universe is something that I'm not as attuned to as I am for Star Trek, so I'm looking forward to learning about that. We do get a little bit of kind of flashbacks to the Mandalorian's backstory here. We see him in kind of flashbacks as a child, and we learn a little bit about what happened back then. The setting, of course, is a galaxy that's recovering from the years spent under the boot heels of the Empire. I think I remember seeing from the background material, it takes place about 5 years after the fall of the Empire in Return of the Jedi, or 3 years, or something like that. So it's very clear that, this is a galaxy that has been traumatized. There are still a lot of scars of the Empire and some remnants laying around, as we see by Werner Herzog's character, who would appear to be an ex-imperial high-uppity muckamuck, maybe a governor or a moff or something like that, who gives the Mandalorian his latest bounty, which is to track down a target that all they have is the age, 50 years old. Along the way to track down this target, he meets Nick Nolte's character, an Ugnaught, that I have to say was a kind of a highlight of this episode. I really enjoyed his performance, and his "I have spoken" line I thought was interesting. Ugnaughts we've seen in the background in Star Wars films before, but never in a really central role. So it was really cool to kind of get a little insight into this Ugnaught in particular. The blurgs that they ride, of course, look ridiculous, but it's definitely fitting in with the universe and the aesthetic that they're going for here. One thing I have to say is I found the episode very dark, and I first watched it kind of in the middle of the day. I blocked the windows as best I could, but the scenes seemed really dark to me. And then in the evening, when it was darker, watched them again. They still seemed dark, but it was definitely a lot more watchable. And my fiance, who only saw it in the evening, didn't watch it with me during the daytime, did comment that it seemed dark to her as well. I know they're going for the mood and that, that sort of dark on the fringe, on the outer rim territories. I don't know if that's the case, but these dark, seedier parts of the galaxy. So It fit with the aesthetic, but it was a little bit hard to watch there. I do have to admit, I was kind of on the fence as to how I was feeling about this show, if I was going to stick with it, until we get to kind of the final act of the story, in which the Mandalorian meets up with IG-11, a bounty hunting droid, played by Taika Waititi. And I really enjoyed their kind of back and forth and their interplay, his kind of constant threat to self-destruct, and they played off each other really well. It's clear that the Mandalorian has a problem with droids, which is, he's like, you're kind of okay. But at the very end, when they finally meet up with their target, and of course, I should say spoilers if you haven't watched The Mandalorian and you don't want to be spoiled. The ending is what really grabbed me, because it's clear that they're going for lots of big ties to the wider Star Wars universe, which, I should have expected. I wasn't thinking clearly about that, but, obviously they're going to really tie it in with a lot of Star Wars lore. And this 50-year-old target that apparently both of these bounty hunters have been assigned, probably by two different factions, to locate. And we know that's two different factions because IG-11 says his orders were to terminate, and it, with prejudice. This target must be terminated. But the Mandalorian's orders said, bring back alive, if possible, but if not, with proof of termination. To which, another party to this negotiation says that wasn't the agreement, but, there's kind of seems to be a bit of leeway on that. Now they come across this target and it's in like a baby carrier, and the Mandalorian opens it up and it turns out to be an infant, or at least a very young version of whatever species Yoda is. Now, I happen to know that the species name for Yoda's species has never been revealed, and I believe that's true for both the primary, films and television series, as well as the books and supplementary material. I believe. I'm not as versed on that, of course, as I am with Star Trek, but I'm told by experts that the species name has never been given before. And the only other member of Yoda's species we've seen was Yaddle from Star Wars Episode 1, and she was also Force sensitive. So that makes me wonder, is this baby Yoda species, is he or she Force sensitive as well? Is this something they're going to be playing with? Is there some kind of link to the Jedi or something like that? Interesting. I'm not sure. I don't know what this ending means, but I will say that this ending made me really, really want to watch more and see where this story is leading and what it's building to. So I think a very solid foundation has been built for this show going forward. Another thing I wanted to mention was a lot of the little continuity connections and canon connections that are in this episode to the wider Star Wars universe. Now, again, like I said, I'm not as familiar with all of this as I am with Star Trek, but there were a number of things. There's some Trandoshans that we see, who's like that bounty hunter Bosk. We've got a Kowakian monkey lizard who's being eaten or being roasted over a spit with a second one of them looking on. You might remember Salacious Crumb from The Return of the Jedi was a Kowakian monkey lizard. I have to admit, that was my fiance that gave me the proper name of that species. She's into Star Wars, I'm into Star Trek. It works. And also there was a Gonk droid that I saw that was kind of cool. And I don't know the name, but that little eye thing that pops out of the door that we saw in Return of the Jedi, there's a very similar one in this episode as well. So yeah, a lot of little and countless more, I'm sure. I've already mentioned the Ugnaught and things like that. The Star Wars fans out there, I'm sure, will point out the scores more of references that were there that I completely missed, that completely went over my head. So yeah, interesting stuff. Pretty cool that they're bringing in all this Star Wars lore. I'm interested to see where it goes. I know it's only 8 episodes long, so a significantly less time commitment than some other television series are. So I'm definitely going to stick with this. I think I'm going to continue to bring you weekly videos about the episodes, except for this week, of course, we get 2 episodes. The second episode is coming on Friday, so you'll have a video for that fairly shortly as well. I want to see where this goes. Jon Favreau, as kind of the showrunner, he's definitely hooked me. Dave Filoni did an excellent job directing this episode. I'm very much looking forward to future episodes as well. I know Taika Waititi has directed at least 1 episode, and I'm a huge fan of his direction. So definitely really curious to see where this all goes, what this all leads to. But I know this has been just kind of a very surface level review. I'm not as well versed in Star Wars. I'm going to try and learn as much as I can, but you'll have to bear with me. But for all of you out there who watched The Mandalorian Chapter 1, what did you think? Is it something that you're going to continue to watch? Are you enjoying it? Do you have any theories as to what's going on, what this young Yoda-esque alien represents? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, of course, to the Patreon supporters for letting me do this and bring these videos to you and talk about the things that I love on camera. I really do appreciate it. Thanks to everyone else for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Most of the content on this channel is Star Trek related, but there will also be Star Wars stuff. I'm sure I'll also do a review of The Rise of Skywalker as well when that comes out. So yeah, let me know. Do you want me to talk more about Star Wars stuff? Do you want me to keep it to Star Trek? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, the Force will be with you. Always.